answer that particular question. And of course, we'll also talk about the current affairs. At number 4, I'll tell you how to read the newspaper. As I told you earlier, what to read, what not to read, what has to be read with what sort of mindset. All those things I'm going to explain here. And finally, what would be the takeaways? So let's start with the first thing. Now, this is the examination pattern. We all know pre, mains, personality test. Personality test, the 3 stages. Now, if you see the prelims, as we all know, it's objective in nature. Mains, it is subjective in nature. And personality test, this is oral examination. Now, see, in all the 3 stages, always remember, newspaper is going to be very, very important. In prelims, I'll show you questions on current affairs, specifically related to environment, science. Invariably, you can answer them only if you have read the newspaper properly. Similarly, if you look at mains, how can you answer the questions which are related to polity, governance, economy, internal security, which would be coming as current affairs, where you would have to show your knowledge of what you would have studied in the newspapers. Again, it will be very, very important. And even in your personality test, the people who are sitting there, the gentlemen or the women, they would ask you, what is your view about this particular incident? Usually the questions would be such which would be related to events that may have happened in the last few days. So in all the 3 stages, remember, in all the 3 stages of this particular exam, UPSC, we require newspaper. So if you see, first of all, look at the syllabus. Now, first line of the prelim syllabus in General Studies paper 1 clearly says current events. Now, current events concerning all these areas. See, because mostly history of India and Indian national movement will not have a lot of current affairs. But here also, specifically in areas of art and culture, the questions that come, like on festivals or on sports, they may have your current affairs. Similarly, as spoken a few minutes back, science, environment, these 2 areas, almost half of the questions that come in our exam are usually from current affairs. Similarly, in polity as well as governance, let's say new schemes that would have been brought by the government, how would you know them? You would know only when you know what has come in the newspaper. Similarly, if we talk about polity, let's say there is a news article about fundamental rights. I'll show you one example on Aadhaar. Now, such questions have come in the past which are related to current affairs. Similarly, if I talk about Indian and world geography, new phenomena might be observed, might have been seen, and there might be questions based on them. Sometimes, as you all know, environment and geography, they are very overlapping areas. So if the questions on, let's say, fauna and flora come, it can be from any of these areas. So all these areas, what I'm trying to suggest here is that if you have read your newspapers properly, you are going to succeed in the exam. Of course, paper 2 general studies does not require newspaper, it is CSAT. So we are not going to talk about that in this session. If we move to the syllabus of mains, now look at this. Again, Indian heritage and culture may not have lots of CA. Current affairs will not be there. But then, geography of the world and society. In these 2 areas, your knowledge about the current happenings will definitely help you. For example, there is a question on anything related to society. For example, take women. And the question is something like that, what can be done with regards to the protection of women? Now, recent initiatives done by the government, that can be written over here. How would you know those recent initiatives? Only when you have read the newspaper. Similarly, I told you geography of the world. Let's say in the geography of the world, there is a question about some recent phenomena, let's say southern oscillation. Now, you recently read about that, you would have written about them. Similarly, if there is a question on polar vortex, Why was suddenly this change as far as the atmosphere or the climatic conditions in North Hemisphere was concerned? That could have been written only if you knew the recent happenings. So remember, in paper 1, in these areas, your knowledge of current affairs do come in handy. Similarly, if we come to paper 2, see, IR, absolutely nowhere else you will get this thing. You will have to read the newspapers to know about it. For example, so many things are going on right now. If you see the Ukraine crisis, how the world seems to be moving towards another era of Cold War. Russia versus US is playing out. Similarly, if you see the crisis happening in Taiwan, China and USA, they seem to be on a collision path. Now, China is clearly saying that they are not going to be the yesteryear's Russia at this point of time, that they are threatening that, see, we are going to give you a good answer if anything on this is happening. But then USA is also very clear that they'll protect Taiwan, they'll protect its independence. Similarly, so many things are happening in Africa, in West Asia. Both in prelims and mains, the question come on IR. How do we know about them? Only when we know newspaper. Similarly, I have told you about polity, governance, constitution, things which come in newspaper like Aadhaar bill was there, Aadhaar Act came. Now the government recently in the parliament, they have got the legislation that Aadhaar should be linked to electoral rolls. Similarly, the age of marriage is being increased from 18 to 21. These all are what? Current affairs. And where do we study them? In the newspaper. So please understand, the purpose of telling all this in the last 5 minutes is that understand the importance of newspaper. Newspaper is very, very important. It's paramount as far as our preparation for the exam is concerned. There is no doubt about that. Third paper, whether it is tech, that is science, whether it is economy, biodiversity, even in disaster management, questions have come. The recent cloudburst in Uttarakhand, such questions have been asked. The questions in science, I'll show you a question on nanotechnology. You could have answered that question if you had read the newspaper properly. Please understand, again I'm reiterating, that right now when you are listening to me, you should have understood one thing, that when you are reading the newspaper, you should link it to your syllabus. That if you are reading a particular article, in your mind you should ask yourself, okay, where can this article be asked? Where can they ask us anything about this article? That is a very, very important thing that you have to understand. Keep on linking your knowledge, okay, I'm studying this, there it will be useful for me. So if you do this, it will help your preparation. And how do you do that? You do that only when you have remembered the whole syllabus. See, even in ethics, integrity and aptitude, trust me, if you can bring certain things, examples from the present disposition, present era, it is of course going to help you. See, a few days ago, in this week only, the great South African Nobel laureate Desmond Tutu died. Now, he did so much for apartheid. If tomorrow any question is about apartheid or anything related to this, or if you could quote any of the, I would say, quotation, or if you could give his example only, it will give your answer a new type of support. Why do everybody have to write only about Nelson Mandela when certain things are coming? Or why would everybody has to write only about Mahatma Gandhi? Can we go beyond them? Can we think about new people? So in the case of Nelson Mandela, we have his companion, a friend of his who died recently. Maybe he can be given as examples at some places. So we'll have to use all these things. Now, even in your essay as well as answer writing, please understand, newspapers will be very, very crucial. Question is asking, let's say, critically analyze a particular thing. Now, you have read something. You know one half half of that, okay, let's say the age of marriage is being increased to 21 from 18. Now some of you have read about this and you think there is only good thing about it. That absolutely this is a brilliant idea. But let's say tomorrow UPSC asks to find out the faults in this or asks us to comment on this, critically analyze this. Maybe we'll have to criticize this also, that there are certain mistakes in this. How do we do that? We do it only if we have a deep understanding or if we have developed our view about each and every issue. If we haven't developed our issue or view about a particular issue, it becomes very tough to write a good answer. Similarly, essay. Any essay, any type of essay, you will start from historical perspective and invariably you will come to today's time. So there also it would be needed. So remember, whenever we are talking about newspaper, it is going to help us in these areas also. We need to develop a deep understanding, a good view about all the things, and based on that, we'll have to write concise and better answers. See, trust me, better answer. How you can get better number is that even if you get half a mark extra per 20 question, overall that gives us 10 marks extra in one paper. And for this half a marks extra, remember your newspapers, examples, data, all that which you would have gained from newspaper will be very, very helpful. Now, if you move ahead, you can see this. I'm showing it based on PYQ of prelims. That in the last few years, these many number of questions have come in prelims that are coming from your current affairs. Now trust me, any student, if they want to clear prelims, now if you see, for example, this year and this year, according to our estimates, some 27 questions were from current affairs. Now, let's say somebody has not read the newspaper, absolutely didn't read it. So now that particular student is going with 73 questions in the examination hall. And as you all know, the cutoff is usually between, let's say, 100 to 110. So he has to get, he or she, some 50 to 55 totally correct answers. It will be a big challenge if the student went without newspaper reading, because you never are guaranteed that you will be knowing everything about the static areas or the regular subjects. But if somebody has read the newspaper, and even out of these 27, let's say they get 10 to 15 totally correct, you can clearly see this comes down by around, now you require only, let's say, 40 to 45 questions. That is the requirement of yours from these static areas out of these 73. So please understand, we cannot go in any exam leaving such a big component totally vacant. We'll have to know about them. We'll be studying the newspapers properly so that we can give our prelims in the best possible manner. Now, look at one question. I brought this question. This was a question of 10 mark. And you can see here, what do you understand by nanotechnology and how is it helping in the health sector? Now, this was a Mains 2020 question. It's a 10 mark question. Now, I am quoting you two articles. See, this is a July 15, 2020 article, and this is a March 2nd, 2020 article. They both are about nanotech. You can see nanotechnology, an undertapped area in India, Professor C.N.R. Rao. And here you can see tiny particles, big solutions by Soma Basu. She is the correspondent over here. And here Professor C.N.R. Rao is talking about this. What I'm trying to suggest here is that if anyone would have read these articles during their preparation, they would have easily understood what exactly is nanotech. You would have defined this nanotech, and then the use of this specifically in the health sector, where all nanotech is helping us in the health sector, a person would have been able to give a proper and good answer to this. So my only thing that I'm suggesting here is that if you are reading newspaper properly, invariably it is going to help you in your prelims, in your mains, which I have demonstrated by the number of questions that come in prelims from current affairs, and which I am demonstrating by showing you the question, exact question that came in the examination, and showing you the links from where you could have written the answer to this particular question. Moving ahead, if you see here, newspaper, I'm coming to what all they give us. So their knowledge is basically from two perspectives, general knowledge and general awareness. So if you are looking at any of the current affairs, these are the two things that we gain from them. Now, earlier we have always said that you should always concentrate more on general awareness, what is happening in and around you. And based on that, whatever you learn out of this, you will use it in your answers. Or you will use it to give your correct answers for the previous year questions. But then, for example, if you remember, and if some of you would have seen this year 2021 question, there were certain questions from general knowledge also, specifically related to sports. There was question on Olympics. There was question on World Cup related to cricket. So these general knowledge questions also came this time. See, one or two questions, 2-3 questions that came does not say that we have to give a lot of focus on general knowledge, but if you have some idea about them, it doesn't hurt. But our focus usually and more would be all the time on general awareness. You need to be aware about the facts that have come and you have to analyze those. So, how do you analyze a particular article? Let's say a particular article came in the newspaper. What do you do with that? So let me show you the method of doing that. See, you chose the article which is related to current affairs. You read those articles. Now based on those articles, you cleared the concept. Every article would have certain concepts. For example, let's say from 18, the age is getting increased to 21, the minimum age. Now this is a news. Based on that, now there would be many things which would be related to it. For example, some people will say fundamental rights are attached to it. It is a right. The government is increasing this to 21. Some will say, of course, this is related to women empowerment. As one of the benefits of this is that this will give more time to women to study, make career. So different aspects are related. So we have to understand which all aspects are related to a particular news. Now, we read a particular news item. We are done with that. Later, how do we recall it? That is the third aspect here, revision. Because, see, right now, we are on January 2nd. And you all know, let's say, prelims is going to happen in after 5-6 months. So, how do you remember that during the prelims, what you had read on January 2nd? So for that, you have to develop a mechanism to keep on revising the things from time to time. Some of you may have a mechanism that you may make. Some of you may keep the DNAs handy. Some will use the magazines at this point of time. So different people would be using different methods in order to do the revision. But then everybody has to have a strategy. Some people, we talk to students, some say that, sir, after every 10 days, after 15 days, I do a revision of what all I studied in the last few days. Some have a strategy that, see, after every month when I get the monthly magazine, I look into the monthly magazine, I try to remember all those points which I have studied during the entire month. Specifically the important points I definitely look into. So different people, different mechanism, different strategy, but then everybody is following them. Now, if we move ahead, let me show you this article which came recently. I have chosen this. It was looking so good. plus the fact that I thought this is very important for prelims. So what I'm doing, when I'm reading the newspaper, I'm also thinking in my mind which topic might be more important for me, which topic might be more important for mains. So let me show you if this is a picture. As you can see, the picture is on James Webb Space Telescope. Now, if I got this article, what do I do? First of all, they have written, what will the next gen Webb telescope unveil? How is it different from Hubble? What will it enable us to see in the farthest reaches of the universe? Now, first of all, it's a next gen Webb telescope. That is clear. Now, here it's saying Hubble. So many of you who would have read the newspaper, who are reading the newspaper for the first time, may not be knowing what exactly was Hubble. So, just for your knowledge, it was also a telescope. And if you don't know, slightly I can do a Google of this, check about this background, what exactly is this. Now later, if I look into this article, it says James Webb Space Telescope conceived some more than 30 years ago. Now this is not important that when was it conceived. As the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope. Now I didn't have to do the Google. If had I read the entire thing, I would have now known that Hubble was nothing but Hubble Space Telescope. Now it says, Webb is the largest and most powerful observatory ever built. So we have to remember that this is the largest plus most powerful. This has to be remembered. Once in orbit, it will allow astronomers to peer into the farthest reaches of the universe. Now nothing prominent has come out of this. Farthest reaches we are going to observe. Now if you see the 5 points here. Number 1, folding. Folded is written. Number 2, sun shield structure unfolds. Number 3, sun shield layers extend and separate. Number 4, secondary mirror deployed. Number 5, lateral wings of primary mirror deployed. So basically, these are what? The various stages in which this telescope will be operating. Now, look at this. If I am asked tomorrow about this particular thing, maybe prelims, the question can come in how many stages, or these stages are arranged and the question can come on that. Similarly, you can see here a lot of these information is given about L2, the Lagrange, the sun shield. On all these the knowledge is given. So I'll have to identify, okay, based on this, they may ask some specification about this particular telescope. So I'll remember those small points. For example, you can see almost 3 times bigger than Hubble's. 18 gold-plated beryllium hexagons give much greater light gathering capability. So I'll remember, okay, fine enough. It is already talked that it is the largest, 3 times greater than Hubble. And here, the compound that is being used, the element is beryllium, which is hexagons, and it is 18 gold plated. So have to be remembered by us at this point, because tomorrow in prelims the question can be following are certain salient features about the James Webb Space Telescope. Identify the correct ones. Instead of beryllium, they wrote some other element's name. That will be wrong. So that is the thing that we have to identify here, that what is the thing that we need to remember, what are the things that we can leave. So we'll have to keep on identifying the related topics, the topics which are related to prelims. Now, let's come to the next part, the identification of mains related topics. Now, for example, this time I have taken an image or an article, the cold truth about India's income inequality. So you know, in economics, if you have studied or you will be studying the Gini coefficients, that there is a lot of disparity when it comes to India. Indian people, the poor and rich, the disparity is only increasing. The rich are becoming more richer, the poor are becoming more poorer. So this difference, the distance between the rich and poor is constantly only increasing. So if you see this article, what does it say? The latest edition of the World Inequality Report. Now I'm underlining every time, you can see the more important points are being underlined by me. Has confirmed that the world continues to sprint down the path of inequality. Global multimillionaires have captured a disproportionate share of global wealth, growth over the last several decades, the top 1% took 38% of all additional wealth accumulated since mid-90s, whereas the bottom 50% captured just 2% of it. Now, if you have read till here, one of the things that is, in prelims, you all know it is always asked who publishes this report. So, for example, World Inequality Report is published by, and options will be given IMF, World Bank, etc., etc. So, for prelims, this can be the question. In mains, if there is any question on inequality, specifically economic inequality, what do you have to write? You will have to write these datas that, and who has given this? See, forward written by Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo. And Esther Duflo, those both of them are Nobel laureates, they have published this article. So some facts can come out of this. For example, top 1% have got 38% of additional wealth since 90s, whereas the bottom 50% just 2%. Now this is the world data. If you look at Indian data, they says India's case is particularly stark. The foreword by Nobel laureate economist Abhijit Banerjee and Eastern Duflo says India is now among the most unequal countries in the world. This means that the gap between the top 1% and the bottom 50% is widest for India among the major economies in the world. Gap is wider in India than US, UK, China, Russia, France. Clearly, for us that there is no number, but what they say is India, when it comes to gap, is bigger than US, UK, Russia, China, France. If we go ahead, poverty has persisted. The journey of this inequality over time reveals that socialist-inspired 5-year plans contributed to reducing the share of the top 10% who had 50% of the income under colonial rule to 35 to 40% in the early decades after independence. However, since the mid-1980s, deregulation and liberalization policies have led to one of the most extreme increases in income and wealth inequality observed in the world. While top 1% has majorly profited from economic reforms, growth among low and middle income groups has been relatively slow and poverty has persisted. What a beautiful points I am getting to write on any topic or any answer on poverty. What is it saying? Basically what I got or what I understood from this topic is that, see, after independence, in the initial first 3 decades, 3 to 4 decades, poverty, the gap between the rich and the poor had gone down. Earlier during British times, this was around top 10% had 50% of the income. Now that came to 35 to 40%. So that had happened. But after liberalization, 1991, the LPG reforms, after the markets were open, this gap is again widening. So now I can easily understand here that this is giving us an idea about the inequality, specifically the economic inequality that persists in our country. Poverty still persists in our country. This whole process of eradication of poverty has been slow. So many things I am getting. So out of this question or this particular article, you can see this is an article of 28th December that I have taken. What I understood is that, see, only one point in these 2 paragraphs is important for me, that is World Inequality Report. Who has published that? Beyond that, everything is for me to understand that poverty is increasing, the gap between the rich and poor is increasing, and this is something which is happening in India at a very quick pace. Initial few years, it was not happening, now it is happening. So, this you have to remember. Let's move ahead. I've given you another article. And now this, look at this. Previous article, very much it was related to economy or social issues, social justice. Now if I see this article, drones to monitor illegal liquor manufacturing in Bihar. This is 29 December. Now if you look at this particular article, drones, so definitely related to science and tech. Now, illegal governance, because you know in Bihar there is prohibition, and of course to a certain extent economy, because this is a very flourishing illegal economy. Now, if you look at this article, drones will be used to monitor illegal liquor manufacturing in Bihar. A trial run has already been done on December 25th, in which 3 companies participated. State Excise Commissioner B. Kartikeya Dhanji told the Hindu. Soon the department will finalize a company to use drones on performance basis. So clearly, use of science, you have to understand that this is a good method or a good initiative where the innovations of science and technology is being used to help in all these sectors, because undoubtedly the wrong people would be making money out of this, so it affects the security. Undoubtedly it is challenging the government initiatives, and lastly you have to understand that economy also gets hurt in this. Plus, so many people die because of this liquor which is wrongly made, at times contaminated, which tragedies keep on happening. Similarly, apart from all this, you can see I have written in good practices, case studies. Maybe in ethics also as a case study it comes that you are the excise commissioner of a particular district in Bihar. You get to know that in your district a lot of illegal liquor is being supplied. So how will you try to control that? So in the points, a very good point will be that we will be using tech. Drones can be used. Further, if I read this article, the Hindu learned that the 3 companies participated in the trial conducted in the Digha area in Patna, and a night vision drone trial was conducted at Kangan Ghat in Patna city. So that means there is the facility of night vision drone also. In 2021, the State Excise Prohibition and Registration Department conducted these many raids against illegal liquor trade, manufacturing and consumption were carried out by the State Home Department. How many people were arrested? These are 2,390 under prohibition laws only this year. So please remember, this is not important. These data are not important. What is important is that people are getting arrested, there are raids happening, and now you will see here that a charge is that usually it is the poor people who are getting arrested. Marginalized section of the society, they are getting arrested under these prohibition laws. That the rich, they are getting it. This is the acquisition that keeps on flying. So this is also related to social justice in that sense. Finally, the Patna High Court recently announced the appointment of judicial officers as presiding officers in states 74 special courts to hear cases involving the violation of prohibition laws. Clearly, governance, judiciary comes into picture, polity comes into the picture. Lastly, according to officials of the State Excise Prohibition and Registration Department, over 3.5 lakh people have been arrested under this law since 2016. Think 5 years, 3.5 lakh people arrested, 70,000 arrests on an average is happening per year. If you think that there are 365 days, almost around 200 arrests are happening every day. Nothing. The state government brought a new law under which so many people are getting arrested. So tomorrow, if there is a question on prohibition, you can point so many things, and one of the negative impact of this, you can say that this has increased the burden on whom? Police as well as judiciary. Now, one of the points you saw, the Patna High Court recently announced the appointment of judicial officers as presiding officers in the state's 74 special courts related to violation of prohibition laws. So you can just simply imagine the sort of work that has increased over judiciary as well as over police. So we can learn all these points from here. Similarly, if we go ahead, now let us see this particular article. See, if you look at the headlines of these two articles, number one says Lok Sabha passes bill to link electoral rolls with Aadhaar. This is a topic related to polity. We have discussed a bit about this, that this can be a question. Number two article is why the Aadhaar voter ID link must be stopped. Now, see, please understand. We have taken two particular articles. Now, these articles will develop your view, Because as I said earlier also, the question might be that they are asking your opinion, both pro as well as the con. They can ask you to critically analyze this particular bill. So here you can see, as you can see, Aadhaar is not a proof of citizenship. Opposition slams it for the tearing hurry in which this bill is being passed. Government says it will purify voter lists, that those who are not eligible to vote, they will go out of this. So based on these articles, you understand both the pro as well as the con of a particular thing. And remember, in UPSC, this has to be done. We need to know both the sides of the story in order to present our answer in a better manner. If we don't know about both the sides of the story, invariably what will happen is we did not know that the question, if the question is asking critically analyze or comment, and we didn't have the idea about the second side of the story, our answer becomes incomplete. So that is the thing that you have to remember. Moving ahead. For example, one more thing that comes is topics which are regularly in news. Now, for example, see here, vying for influence over Kabul. Now, you know, since so many months now, what is happening? Continuously, the news related to Afghanistan, news related to Taliban is coming. Now, as you all understand, we are using this knowledge for our UPSC exam. In UPSC, this can come under the IR section for, let's say, a 150 to 250 word question. Now, if you would have read the news article on Afghanistan for last 5-6 months, you would already know what is happening in Afghanistan. So by now, you can take a conscious decision that, see, I know enough about Afghanistan, I know what is happening over there, I know what are the position of the global players like China, USA, Pakistan, India, the Central Asia, Iran, even the other countries with regards to Afghanistan is concerned. I know how did the government fell, I know how did the Taliban government come, I know how did the people were evacuated from Afghanistan. So I know all these things. So what I am trying to suggest is that by now, you should have a faith in your knowledge that, see, tomorrow if there is a question on Afghanistan, my knowledge would be able to help me sail over that particular question. So, maybe this is not required. Let me read this for a second. First of all, Arab Gulf is poised to become an important player once again in a Taliban-ruled Afghanistan. Okay. On December 19th, Pakistan hosted a special session of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation to address the crisis in Afghanistan. Now, if you would have read your IR, you would know OIC, Islamic countries body, was meeting. Now here, Taliban, which took over Kabul in August after a 20-year-long war, so you can understand, around 4 months back. US also attended, Saudi Arabia was there. The humanitarian crisis, you all know what is happening in Afghanistan. People are dying, they are not having enough to eat, they are not having enough money to buy the basic necessities. Now, when Pakistan hoisted the OIC, India played host to foreign countries of Central Asian states where Afghanistan topped the agenda as well. All the attending countries, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Kyrgyzstan, also OIC members choose to prioritize deliberations with New Delhi. Within the OIC, there have been other fissures at play too, specifically among the Gulf states that are now spilling over on the issue of Afghanistan and determining influence over the country's new regime led by the Taliban. Now, see, when India was hosting this session, where these Central Asian countries were there, then also this news would have come. Similarly, when Pakistan would have hosted, then also it would have come. Similarly, when Afghanistan had fallen, then also this news would have come. So in the last 4-5 months, there would have been so much that now I can think, okay, fine enough, I know enough about Afghanistan, let me leave this particular area. Similarly, let me show you one more topic. For Afghan women, it's the great regression. Under the Taliban, the gains they made over 20 years, particularly in education and employment, face decimation. Now, unfortunate, but it's a fact. What has happened there has been very bad, and specifically very, very bad for Afghan women. But then, please understand, we are preparing for UPSC. And at this moment, when we are preparing for UPSC, we have to be very objective in our preparation. We have to see whether I need to study this particular aspect. And everything is decided based on only one aspect, whether that question or based on that question, based on that topic, a question will come or not. That is the ultimate criteria to decide anything at this point of time. No other thing is needed here. please understand, this is the criteria here. So now if you see for Afghan women, unfortunate. But then we can leave this topic because we know enough is known about this topic. Let's move ahead. So slowly and slowly, you all will realize that if you get into the habit of reading newspaper, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months have passed, you will start identifying topics about whom you would already have the knowledge, and you can easily say, I don't need to do this. You can leave that particular topic. Moving ahead. So here only the big question comes, what to read, what not to read. Based on our discussion in the last few minutes, you could understand anything related to constitution becomes important. Any changes done in the constitution, new laws, new bills, they are important. Judiciary, the judgments given by the Supreme Courts, even sometimes high courts, they become very important. Similarly, news related to RBI, or if I say news related to economy, they become very important. Science and tech, I told you in prelims, if 10 questions of science and tech are coming, you will see that half of them usually would be directly from the newspaper. We cover general science very less. It's more about current affairs in science. Similarly, environment, I told you, fauna and flora. Suddenly one animal till yesterday was endangered, today it has come and it has been classified as an extinct animal. It becomes very important for our exams perspective. Government schemes. Now you can see, for example, our Prime Minister, recently he had gone to Kashi, and the renovation of Kashi as it has happened, that was one of the urban infrastructural programs. Similarly, so many places your metros are coming, you know, bullet trains are coming. These all are what? Infrastructural projects. But then there are schemes related to women, related to scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. So we need to know about them. What we can leave, we can easily leave the news related to politics. 99% times you can leave the news related to regional news. They would not be important. Give a cursory glance on them, but mostly they are not going to be asked. Similarly, news related to entertainment. See, we might love our stars, we might love our heroes, we might love and admire their acting capabilities. But the fact of the matter is, UPSC is not going to ask a lot of questions from these sections. One question, 1 year, 2 questions in 10 years does not compel us to read these areas. So we can leave this. Similarly, sports. 2021, there were questions, but that does not mean that we start studying everything regarding sports. You know, India-South Africa test match recently concluded. Now, it does not mean that you go ahead and start looking at the scorecard and know about who did what. Similarly, there are so many things happening. Pro Kabaddi is going to begin. We start watching Kabaddi saying that maybe one question will come. No, we always analyze that if we invest this many hours, are we going to get some good output out of that or not? Based on that, we determine whether we should study a particular thing or not. That's the very important thing that you'll keep in mind. So, before your interviews, before your personality test, if you have written in your hobby something related to sports or entertainment, of course you will study them. But right now, if your prelims is approaching or your mains is approaching, I would suggest that you can easily leave these areas, because for 1 or 2 questions, that is general knowledge. Cursory glance also would have told me what had happened in the finals of the 2019 World Cup, or what had happened in the recently concluded Olympics. So that is more about general knowledge. We don't have to do an in-depth study of those areas. So let me give you 2 examples here. For example, recently when Prime Minister had gone to UP, and you all know in UP, one of the perfume businessman, on his house there was a big IT raid, and around 196 crore rupees of cash and 23 kg of gold, etc. was identified. Prime Minister, as you also know, at this moment there is a lot of canvassing going on for the all-important UP elections. So he said, pre-2017 perfume of corruption exposed in Uttar Pradesh. PM links SP to businessman whose premises were searched by GST officials. Now, if you look at this particular thing, the picture is he had gone that day to Kanpur. You can see Mr. Hardeep Puri and the Chief Minister of UP, Yogi Adityanath ji. They both are here. And along with the Prime Minister, in Kanpur, the metro train's first phase was inaugurated by the Prime Minister. So you can clearly see here, this is a news which is related to politics. So we can leave it. But of course, what happened in Kanpur, that we should know. That is, metro train has been inaugurated, metro lines have started to operate, because that's important from the point of view of infrastructure, communication, transport. Similarly, let me show you one another article. A lot of times people ask, sir, what do we do with regards to this? See, what is this? Losing steam rapidly. What is that? It says the Indian Railways spent more money than it earned in FY, that is financial year 2019-20, the year before the pandemic, according to the latest audit report by CAG of India. By now, you would know CAG comes under the polity section, and if you have already studied, great. If you have not, you would be studying it. Moving ahead. However, since the actual expenditure on pension payments were not included in the calculations, the accounts do not reflect the true financial performance, observed the CAG. Since financial year 15, the railways has consistently fallen short of the projected earnings, with financial year 2020 registering the highest shortfall in the last 6 years. Both freight and passenger traffic fell in FY20 compared to FY19. The pandemic further exacerbated the national transporters' finances as passengers' revenue fell sharply in FY 2020-21 compared to FY20. And this is by the Hindu data team. Now, if you understand, if I study only this much, the conclusion, if tomorrow GS paper 3, any question is on the topic of transportation, I will be more than enough. I will be in a position to give a good answer here. If I go inside and if I try to mug up all these numbers, 20,708 crores, 140.19%, 48,626 crores. Remember, you read it on 2nd January, but will you be able to remember it in October when your mains is going to come? No. So rather than trying to remember all these things, why don't I remember that here, number one is that as far as the railways is concerned, the efficiency is going down. Number two, there is a shortfall in earning. Number three, if you see sliding downwards, what is going downward? The internal revenue. There is a sharp loss. That's the third point. And overall, there has been an impact of lockdown. So I am very clear, based on this particular article, I'm not going to mug up all the data. What I'm going to do rather is that I'm going to get the crux of the issue. I'm going to make my points based on that. Forget my numbers. That's the whole thing. So this is something you have to understand when you are reading the newspaper. You have to be very, very clear exactly what you are going to read, what you are going to leave. This is something which is very, very important. Now, if we move ahead, should one make notes? Now, remember, this is a big question that people ask. Number one question that people ask, how many newspaper? My answer usually is one. If you have the time, go for the second. Number two, they ask is how to make notes. And number three, they ask is which newspaper. See, you can go with Hindu, or as you all know, UPSC. This is the best newspaper. If you want to go beyond this, why not Indian Express? You can go definitely for that. You can go for articles specifically for economics and all those. You can go to Mint or the Financial Times. But this is more than enough. Should you make notes? Please understand. Let's say you read the previous article. Based on that, you made these small notes. You read the article, you have made the notes, and now you would revise it later. But then it takes a lot of time. Many of you would be working professionals. You would think that, no, I don't have that much time. So that's why every day Byju'S provides you with the CNN. We provide you with the comprehensive news analysis every day. And you have got that particular report, article with you. You can keep it rather than making the notes on your own. That acts as your notes. And finally, as you know, at the end of the month, you also get the magazine. So why not have this magazine for quick glance over all the issues in the news? So this would be the thing that you can follow. See, again, I'm not saying you don't need to make notes. If you have the time, you can do that. Ultimately, it's your strategy. These are the different methods that you can follow. Some people even cut the newspaper items and they keep it with them, safeguard it, and they do the revision later on from that. Based on whatever they would have underlined, they would be reading it and they would be revising based on that later. Now finally, how can we help you? Please remember, as far as Byju's is concerned, presently we have three major offerings. Number one, tablet program where all the lectures are pre-recorded and given to you. Number two is the Byju's home learning program where live classes are done in online manner. And number third is the Byju's classroom program where in offline mode all the classes are conducted. In offline mode, where are we conducting all our classes? Presently in Delhi, Chennai, Hyderabad and Bengaluru. In all these four places, morning, evening and weekend batches are being run. Apart from this, please remember all these three offerings, they include the previous year question paper booklets everywhere along with some 16-17 more books which will be provided to you. Number two, we will be providing you with all the current affairs webinar which will cover your section of current affairs every week, Tuesday, Thursday, these classes will happen, and your test series discussions will also be done through this. Apart from that, you will be provided a student portal where all these recorded webinars will be kept, which you can study later, look into them later. If you have missed out, you can watch them later and do the revision. Apart from that, the DNAs, the CNAs and monthly magazines are also provided to you from our side. Remember one thing very clearly, that tablet program is offered with PHLP also as well as classroom. That is, the tablets will be provided with the PHLP classes as well as the classrooms. So this was all that is provided from our side. I hope in the last around 1 hour, this particular session where we have talked about entire thing, how to go about concurring your newspaper would have proved useful for you. Remember, again, you can clear this exam even if you read a particular book or not. But then you cannot clear the exam if you totally leave newspaper. Please study newspaper to make a much broader base for yourself on which you can clear this exam. Enhance your knowledge, use those knowledge in your prelims, in your mains as well as in your personality test. That's all from this session. Thank you, best of luck and a very happy new year from the entire Byju's team. Goodbye. Byju's, I guess. In this session, we are going to discuss how to approach newspaper for civil services examination. Now, you talk to any number of candidates, those who have cleared this exam, one thing will come out, that they may have studied a particular book or they may not have studied a particular book. But one thing that everybody must have done, that is, they would have definitely read the newspaper. Every serious candidate, those who reach the interviews, those who clear prelims, those who have written multiple number of mains, and of course the successful candidates, everybody does read newspaper because there is simply no substitute for the newspaper. Absolutely no substitute. Your DNAs, your CNAs, they are of course important. Your magazines are important. But then the satisfaction as well as the knowledge that you will receive once you have read the newspaper is of course at a different level. So in the next 1 hour, I'll be taking you through some of the articles. I'll make you understand what to read, what not to read, what you can leave, what has to be your focus, how to decide what is important for prelims, how to decide what is important for mains. All these things I'll be telling you people. So let us now begin with this session. Now, what are we going to do? As you can see in the first stage, I'll tell you about the exam pattern. I hope many of you would be knowing it, but for those who don't know, we'll look into the exam pattern. Number two, I'll go through the prelims as well as the main syllabus, and of course, I'll give you the idea, the significance of the newspaper. In the third stage, I'll show you the PYQs, the questions that have come in the past exam, to demonstrate the importance of newspaper, that if you would have read the newspaper, how easy it would have been for you to answer that particular question. And of course, we'll also talk about the current affairs. At number 4, I'll tell you how to read the newspaper. As I told you earlier, what to read, what not to read, what has to be read with what sort of mindset, all those things I'm going to explain here. And finally, what would be the takeaways? So let's start with the first thing. Now, this is the examination pattern. We all know pre, mains, personality test. Personality test, the 3 stages. Now, if you see the prelims, as we all know, it's objective in nature. Mains, it is subjective in nature. And personality test, this is oral examination. Now, see, in all the 3 stages, always remember, newspaper is going to be very, very important. In prelims, I'll show you questions on current affairs, specifically related to environment, science. Invariably, you can answer them only if you have read the newspaper properly. Similarly, if you look at mains, how can you answer the questions which are related to polity, governance, economy, internal security, which would be coming as current affairs, where you would have to show your knowledge of what you would have studied in the newspapers. Again, it will be very, very important. And even in your personality test, the people who are sitting there, the gentlemen or the women, they would ask you, what is your view about this particular incident? Usually the questions would be such which would be related to events that may have happened in the last few days. So in all the 3 stages, remember, in all the 3 stages of this particular exam, UPSC, we require newspaper. So if you see, first of all, look at the syllabus. Now, first line of the prelim syllabus in General Studies paper 1 clearly says current events. Now, current events concerning all these areas, see, because mostly history of India and Indian national movement will not have a lot of current affairs, but here also, specifically in areas of art and culture, the questions that come, like on festivals or on sports, they may have your current affairs. Similarly, as spoken a few minutes back, science, environment, these 2 areas, almost half of the questions that come in our exam are usually from current affairs. Similarly, in polity as well as governance, let's say new schemes that would have been brought by the government, how would you know them? You would know only when you know what has come in the newspaper. Similarly, if we talk about polity, let's say there is a news article about fundamental rights. I'll show you one example on Aadhaar. Now, such questions have come in the past which are related to current affairs. Similarly, if I talk about Indian and world geography, new phenomena might be observed, might have been seen, and there might be questions based on them. Sometimes, as you all know, environment and geography, they are very overlapping areas. So if the questions on, let's say, fauna and flora come, it can be from any of these areas. So all these areas, what I'm trying to suggest here is that if you have read your newspapers properly, you are going to succeed.